Welcome to this wild card edition of Ronde and Tiki presented by SuperBook Sports. Hey, did you expect Mike Vrabel to be fired? There was a lot of surprises this one actually was Tuesday, but Black Tuesday. I was surprised. I wasn't surprised by most of them, but the Vrabel ones shocked me a little bit.
I'm not surprised because been there 6 years. It's had two bad years, and you could tell they were completely out of ideas on both sides of the ball this year. I like Mike Vrabel. You know he's going to end up somewhere. He's going to be in the NFL somewhere quickly. He's just too good of a football coach. But I think they fired their GM last year, John Robinson. After the AJ Brown trade and the repercussions of that. And I think it was just a matter of time. If they didn't make the playoffs again this year, I'm not surprised. And in fact, I'm surprised there's not two more firings out there. We were talking before we got online that Eberflus is probably going to keep his job after they fired their offensive coordinator. And I'm surprised there wasn't another one in the NFC South, to be honest with you. Dennis Allen's probably keeping his job. But we still don't know what's going on with New England. But I think, what is there, 7 openings right now? Technically 7 openings right now.
7 that's Washington, not Chicago, surprisingly, but Washington, Atlanta, Carolina. Those were all in the NFC, the NFC, and that's it. And the rest of them are we don't know about New England yet, but you have Tennessee, and the Raiders is technically open, and the Chargers is open. So
right. And you got to imagine.
I'm not surprised by any of them except for Vrabel. What's that?
You might be surprised. Mike McCarthy might be on edge right now. He needs to win a playoff game.
Dude, I can't see that happen. I can't see that happening. But you're right about the Saints. But let's get to some of these games. It's too hard. We'll get to it later on in the offseason about who we think is going to take some of these roles and positions. It's going to be some hot young coordinator. The retread coaches don't seem to get the opportunities that often anymore, unless you're like Sean Payton and you had a championship. But before we go on to the games, Rondé, is DeMeco Ryans the coach of the year? Have we solidified that in our minds?
It's either him or Stefanski, I think. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest odds or the best odds for winners is those two. But to me, it's DeMeco. Hold on. It's been a you love when dudes knock on your door, delivery guys knock on your door, and you're like, dude, just don't knock on the door. Just drop the package and leave. Just come on, man. You're disrupting my work here. It's DeMeco. It's DeMeco Ryans.
Hold on, I'll start over. So, Rondé, we thought all year it was going to be DeMeco Ryans for Coach of the Year. No, the expectation was he far exceeded it. CJ Stroud was a marvel, and they make the postseason. So you almost have to give it to him, right?
I think it's him or Stefanski, dude. Stefanski, what they've done in the last 6 games without a quarterback, and then the revelation that Joe Flacco can still play football at a pretty high level and help your superstars become even bigger superstars. I mean, it could be either one of those guys. I mean, you somewhat think that Cleveland has the advantage because they have a great defensive coordinator in Jim Schwartz, and their defense is playing great. So, is it really the head coach? So if you're asking me if I had to make a choice right now, it's DeMeco. Zero expectations coming in this year. They drafted high 2 and 3, got a quarterback and an edge rusher. Both of them are probably, leaders in the conversations for offensive and defensive rookie of the year. I mean, first time head coach. I mean, what he exceeded in terms of what the Houston Texans have been for a decade, to me makes a no-brainer. Be honest with you.
Yeah, I think you're right. And they usually have done these. I think the circumstances that Stefanski had to navigate were extreme with 4 quarterbacks, and technically 5 he started because Flacco didn't start last week, but 5 quarterbacks he started. He gets into the postseason, and I'm not going to say they're a favorite because I don't think they are, but hell, I feel like they could beat anybody. But you usually pick the coach of the year, and we saw this last year with Brian Daboll. It's the guy who significantly overachieves the preseason expectation of the consensus. And the consensus was that the Houston Texans were going to stink and win 2 or 3 games. And instead they win the division. So I agree with you, Rondé. It's going to be D'Amico Ryans. At least it should be D'Amico Ryans.
Dude, no Todd Bowles. The Bucs are only supposed to win 3 games. No Todd Bowles. The Bucs are like 3 games.
You know what? You know what the problem with Todd Bowles in that conversation is that nobody has had it. Like nobody has said it. Nobody's talking about the job that Todd Bowles has done. Nobody's talking about the job that Jason Light has done with the handcuffs of the Tom Brady situation, even though he's retired. But you know what I'm getting at, right? Nobody talks about it because they're the Bucs, and it's a shame because you're right. They had no business winning as many games as they did and winning division again, by the way.
Right. 4 years in a row in the playoffs, dude. That speaks a lot. I know it's obviously over 2 coaches, BA and Todd Bowles, but should be some consideration there. And speaking of considerations, how about the script, dude, that the NFL has written us this week for this wild card? Of course, we're talking RB20 gets to talk about another Eagles-Bucs game, which seems like we play every year in the playoffs now. But Tyreek gets to go back to Kansas City. Packers face Mike McCarthy in Dallas. The Texans go to Cleveland. We get to revisit the Deshaun Watson narrative. Stafford going back to Detroit is the primo matchup of the week, I think. And you get to talk about the Jared Goff comps. Both guys have been to Super Bowls. But I think it's a great wild card weekend. I can't think of a better wild card weekend that we've had in a long time, not to mention 2 weather games. You got to imagine Pittsburgh at Buffalo, and then Miami at Kansas City. All we're going to talk about is the weather for those 2 games because it's been freezing across the entire country, including Florida. So this is a great week, dude. I can't wait to get into these games.
Yeah, we got 6 of them to get to. So let's dig into the first one. First segment, we're going to deal with the Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans because the Texans were the division winner. The Browns obviously were runner-up to the Baltimore Ravens, and so they travel, even though they're the hottest team likely in football right now because of how well Joe Flacco is playing, but also their defense has been dominant. You know, when you want to start handicapping this one, the advantage has to go to the Browns because of the veterans that are on that team, and I'm specifically talking about quarterback. But the Houston Texans feel like a we don't know what we can't do type of team. And we have young, explosive talent from CJ Stroud at the quarterback position. Nico Collins has filled the void that Tank Dell left when he got hurt earlier in the season. And I think the unsaid story with the Texans, Rondé, is Devin Singletary. Right? Dameon Pierce was a marvel last year for the Houston Texans, just a hard charging runner. But he got supplanted by Devin Singletary this year, he's just more versatile. He can do more things. He's more dynamic in the gap schemes and the run games, catch the ball in the backfield. And so as much as I believe that the Browns have the edge and the Texans as a home dog will probably deserve to be that, I can't help but think that the Texans are all going to find a way because they've done it all year.
All right. Well, if I'd say that the strengths of the Cleveland team, just in general, is the hot hand of Joe Flacco. Now, there's also somewhat of a weakness in that too, because he's played 5 games. He has 8 interceptions. At some point, you just got to realize that your defense is good enough, and maybe you want to dial it down. You know, you don't need to be on 10 all day on offense. Like, you can play at about a 6. It's still win a football game. The great equalizer in this one, I think, will be the ability of either teams to stay away from mistakes. And if there's one thing that Houston has not been doing well lately, Tiki, is controlling their penalties. I think over the past 3 weeks, they've had 10 plus penalties in each game, and it's become an Achilles heel for them, which they've been able to overcome. Obviously, they won a huge game last week because of CJ Stroud, Nico Collins. But if they can't keep that on track, then Cleveland's defense is just going to win this game for them, assuming that Joe Flacco doesn't throw two interceptions a game.
I was going to say, as much as I want to see the Texans figure out a way to win this game. If I'm betting money line, I'm going to Cleveland Browns, and if I'm going to line, I'm going to Browns as well. Laying 2.5 on the road they're just a better team, and they have more explosive veteran type players. I think the run for the Texans comes to an end.
I would agree with you. Texans home dogs in this one, Tiki. Might be something to play for in that regard. It's something for D'Amico Ryans to talk his team into. But I think the reality is they were everybody's surprise. They're probably surprised that they ended up winning the division and are hosting a playoff game. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays itself out. All right, Tiki, second game, and it's not in order. These are just kind of randomly thrown, and I was putting these together as like, which one can I start with? Which one can I finish with? I think I'm finishing with LA at Detroit. But second game we're talking about, Tiki, Steelers at Bills. And this one's shocking because I guess not shocking, but 10-point favorites for the Buffalo Bills. Now they've been on a heater, dude, right?
That's a big number.
Right. But a huge number, although they're the hottest team in the NFL. I mean, I know some games last week didn't matter. So the win streak, the number that we talk about a lot doesn't matter. But 10-point favorites at home. I think 36.5 is the over under, and minus 550 for Buffalo at home. Now that's crazy, right? Terrible weather game against probably the second hottest team in the AFC right now in terms of needing to win games, which Pittsburgh had to do and did do, winning 3 in a row to get themselves a chance to get in the playoffs and then ultimately getting in when Jacksonville lost. Dude, quiet as kept. Pittsburgh's defense is 6th in points this year. They're doing a job, right? And since Mason Rudolph has taken over at quarterback, he's become efficient. I had a huge play, Deontay Johnson last week for a touchdown that beat Baltimore in that terrible rainy 4-turnover game. But the run offense has gotten going with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. So for me, this seems like an enormous number. And the Pittsburgh Steelers at plus 425. It's almost like if I got 100, I'm spending it on the Steelers just in case.
Yeah, just in case they get have a hot hand, or
Right.
like they just go off. And the thing that challenges me now, thinking about the Steelers, is that their marvel at edge, TJ Watt, is banged up and is not likely going to play. His 19 sacks were dominant, man. He was a difference. He is a difference maker, and he's not available for this game. It's hard not to look at the Bills and on as the winner of this game. Now, however, we've talked about this for a while. Mike Tomlin is one of the great coaches of this generation. We can't deny that any longer, because there's been many years over the last couple where he had no business winning as many games as he's won and keeping his 500, record intact, 17 straight seasons. And so I can't say that he's going to get blown out in this game. Well, so if I'm betting this and I had extra cash, I'd throw it on the Steelers because they might upset them. But I definitely am taking the Steelers getting 10 points. I think the Bills may win because I think they're just a better team. But if you're going to bet on this number, give me the Steelers as 10. I don't think they're getting blown out in this game.
The Bills' last loss was to Philly, game we talked about last week a little bit, that crazy game. Other than that, they would have won 7 in a row. And their defense has been better than I think we talk about. They had 54 sacks, which I think was 3rd or 4th in the NFL this year. Had 18 interceptions, which I know was 3rd in the NFL. My only reservation about the Bills, and yes, they are the better team, I think on paper, statistically, everything, is the high risk, high reward nature of Josh Allen. Earlier in the year, we knew for a fact that that's why they were losing football games. And they became this enigmatic, your windows closing team. And it felt like that all year until the past 6 weeks, where they've been on a roll. And I agree with you. I think they win this football game, but I can't discount Mike T. He just finds ways, man. He just finds ways. And the talk out there that this might be his last year, like he might be deciding to do something else. I think his team's going to play for him. I think his team's going to play for him.
Yeah. Before we move on and take a break and go to segment 2, Mike T as well as anybody. I mean, hell, he presented you with your gold jacket in the Hall of Fame at
Sure.
the Hall of Fame last year. I've heard. So first of all, earlier in the year, I heard that he was going to get fired. Like, y'all are crazy. There's no way Pittsburgh's firing Mike Tomlin. But what I've heard the last couple of weeks is that Mike Tomlin might step away, take a year off, a la Sean Payton, because it's run its course. I mean, 17 years is a long time. So any insight on what Mike Tomlin might do, regardless of what happens this postseason?
I would probably think he's considering it. I mean, the people in Pittsburgh want to run him out of town every single year. Like, how and why they think that? I mean, right, they won one Super Bowl, right? They went to another one and lost in his tenure. But the reality is, what he's done for that town, and then to have people, yelling from the rafters that we have the worst coach in football, he's overrated. I'm like, if there's anything, he's underrated for what he's been able to do with the talent that's since departed there. When you had Ben and AB when they were at their peak, I mean, they made it look easy. What they've had to do the last 3 years without that is pretty amazing too. So I think he probably nailed it. I think it's got to be rummaging through his mind, and he's empty nesting this year. So I mean, there may be some validity to it. I couldn't tell you right now if it's 100% true or not, but there's no doubt it's starting to gain some traction in his head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you'll miss me when I'm gone. That's all you have to say.
Yes.
All right, Rondé, it is time for the postseason as the race to the big game in Vegas is on. And there's no place to wager on at all. No better place than SuperBook Sports. When you sign up, deposit, and wager in the same day, SuperBook will give you a bonus of up to $250. Plus, SuperBook Sports gives you the chance to compete against Vegas. They don't have ridiculous computer formulas making their odds, just the team of the world's best odds makers on site in Las Vegas. When the sports world is busy, it's time to get busy winning some money. So download the SuperBook Sports app or visit superbook.com to wager and win today. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, welcome back to segment 2 of the Super Wild Card edition of Ronde and Tiki, presented by SuperBook Sports. It's Rondé's time, so I get to ask Tiki a question. We're not doing Ask You, Ask Me today, but I am going to ask you a question here, Tiki. We kind of skipped through this in the first segment. I wanted to kind of start with this, but when the Rams made the playoffs last week, officially, or 2 weeks ago, there are 5 Super Bowl quarterbacks in the playoffs right now. Mahomes, Flacco, Stafford, Hurts, and Goff. Which one are you taking, dude?
Man, I don't believe in Mahomes' team around him right now. Goff, I really like. God, that's a hard one. I'm gonna say Goff. I'm gonna say Goff, only because I want that to happen. I love what Dan Campbell has done. We'll get into it in the last segment, Rondé. But
it's funny you say Goff, because I'm saying Stafford.
Really?
I said it like a month ago. I started to really enjoy watching him play again. Over the past couple of weeks, and again, we'll talk about this later because that's our last game. But there's something about him right now, and Sean McVay is re-energized, dude. Awesome. All right, segment 2, games. We're gonna do, of course, my segment. We're gonna do Eagles at Bucs. Bucs are 3-point dogs at home. 44 is the over and under. And if you're wanting to bet the Bucs for 100, you get 140 back. So, what are the strengths and weaknesses of these two teams going into the playoffs here, Tiki, in your mind?
Well, you know this because you see the Bucs all the time, but offensively, it's where you have to lay your hat with them because of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who is Marvel in the slot. I mean, he's one of the best slot guys in the league. And Baker is not afraid to throw it at the tight windows. And then we talked about that earlier. in the season. So for the Bucs, it's that. Now, if they could ever get their run game going, like if Dave Canales, their new offensive coordinator, could figure out like a process and a procedure to get their run game going, they would be super dangerous. But it just feels like it's fits and starts. Like one week we talk, yeah, they did great. Next week you're like, dude, where the hell did run game go? And so their strength is Baker being fearless and not making mistakes. And because when he does that with the talent at wide receiver that he has, and that's not even mentioning Cade Otton, they're one of the hard teams to reckon with. The weakness to me, Rondé, is that defensively they feel all over the place, and this is your purview. But it's like, what are you doing? do you not know how to play cover three? When I watch them, I get frustrated. You know what I mean? So I think they have a strong ability to potentially keep up if it got into a race, right? But I don't think they could ever make that stop. That's the problem.
Right. I would totally agree with that take. Obviously, I've watched every single snap of them this year. Quietly, though, Tiki, Rachaad White had 990 yards rushing this year. And, of course, he became more of an option in the receiving game. He was third on the team with 64 receptions, dude. Like, that's where he's a threat. And I think they try to use that as a way to justify not being able to run the ball very well. But the reality is they have some young guys that are on their offensive line, new right tackle this year, rookie right guard, left guard's kind of been in flux. The center's only been there a couple of years. I mean, Tristan Wirfs might be the best offensive lineman in football at left tackle, but the rest of them are just a little bit inconsistent. To speak to the defense of the Bucs, they're kind of feast or famine. You know, Todd has always done a great job creating pressure, which is evidenced by their, 48 sacks, and the leader only has 7.5. That's Yaya Diaby, who was a first-year player who only started playing starting week 11. So there's not that explosion of pressure up front. But when you got guys like Levante David, who had a great year, by the way, at linebacker, 4.5 sacks, 17 tackles for loss. I think he's tops in top 2 or 3 in the league in that department. And then Antoine Winfield, they have great players. They have great players on that side of the ball. They're not quite there all the time. There's way too many lapses in judgment. Now, we talk about Philly.
By the way, Antoine Winfield was absolutely robbed for the Pro Bowl.
Could it have been the worst snub of all time? All time.
Yeah.
Buda Baker goes zero stats.
Yes. Zero stats. And I think Antoine Winfield is going to be all pro and not a Pro Bowler.
Right. He's the highest graded. I'm not big into PFF numbers because it's just guys that aren't me are looking at film, putting grades on people, not knowing defenses or whatnot. But he is the highest rated safety in football this year. It's stupid for him not to be widely considered the best safety in football right now. It's just stupid if you don't consider that. You don't watch football if you think anything otherwise. So, anyways, Philly, Tiki. Super Bowl team a year ago. And I've had an issue with Philly all year, and it's not because of Philly themselves. It's because they've been a Super Bowl team a year ago, and they failed to work out the kinks all season long. How is that possible that a team that's in the Super Bowl can't get right now?
I'll tell you. Because as good as it is to be Nick Sirianni and have this quirky attitude and this aggression and this, snarky way about you, when you lose both coordinators and then you hire 2 bad ones, it has a repercussion, right? Sean Desai, I don't know him personally. He was overmatched for the job. And that's not me being a hot take artist, because Nick Sirianni took his play calling duties away from them and gave them to Matt Patricia. They made a bad hire. Now, the side of, and that's really where they've struggled, is on the defensive side of the ball. They're putting these guys in tough situations, and they're not playing well. And I mean, so it's we know where their strength was a year ago. It's all gone. And now if they're getting beat up on offense, Jalen Hurts, I think, has played all season banged up. AJ Brown hurt his knee a little bit against the Giants. I worry that things are just going to crumble without really them getting a chance to have a solid base, to defend their NFC championship from a year ago. So, they're Philly. They're tough. They represent the tough Northeast. I get that, but they're so flawed. It's hard for me to believe that they have a real shot here.
Right, and you look at their injury list right now. AJ Brown on the
Mhm.
injury list, Bonte Smith on the injury list, Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Swift on the injury list, Darius
Yeah,
Slay, Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown got hurt in that last game. Like everybody that
it's
they
every
need to
name.
play.
Oh, yeah, every name, every single one of their names players is hurt going into the playoffs. Now they're going to play, but at the end of the day, it might be terminal, especially on the road against a Bucs team that, if the weather's right, can get hot.
Right. All right. This will be one. Obviously, I'll be paying attention to. It's a Monday night. It's the last game of the weekend. Again, Bucks 3-point underdogs at home. I
No,
can't
give
wait
me
to
the
do
Bucs.
I
Yeah,
can't wait to do my hype video for this one
yeah,
and piss
yeah.
off all the Philly fans that'll be down here. Now, remember, these two teams did play earlier in the year, week 3. Philly was somewhat rolling, and the Bucks were not rolling that week. I think it was 25-11. It's the week that I got my Super Bowl ring or my Hall of Fame ring, and it was miserable. So retribution is at hand. Eagles fans, get ready.
Yeah. I think we
All
agree
right,
on
Tiki.
this one. Bucks. I like the
Yeah,
Bucks 3, and I like them on the money line too.
I love it. All right, second game, Tiki. Packers at Cowboys. This one's going to be fun. I mean, obviously, it's another big line, 7.5 points. Cowboys at home. We know how dominant they've been against teams at home this year. But I'm going to start with this. Let me give you my strengths and weaknesses, and you can follow up. Green Bay won 3 straight games, right, to get themselves in position to get into the playoffs. Aaron Jones had 100 yards rushing in each of those games. Now,
Yep.
we know that Green Bay's defense leaves a little to be desired. They can't stop the run. They have so many lapses in coverage this year. It's frustrating. Probably have the lowest upside of all the playoff teams. But Jordan Love, in his first year as a starter, makes the playoffs, even though they have a young receiving core. They got their run offense right. And if there's a place where Dallas can just beat themselves and show cracks, is when you start putting the ball down their throat in the run game, keeping Dak Prescott and off the offense off the field. This 7.5 points looks like a lot. Now, I don't expect Green Bay to go to Dallas and win, but
Yeah.
it's a take, because
Yeah.
something materially changed in their offense the past couple of weeks. And I think it had a lot to do with their run game.
Well, when I look at the run game and Aaron Jones, I love the kid. He's awesome. He was banged up, and that's why they struggled in points in this season. But they've been very streaky. I mean, it's like lose 4, you win 3, you lose a couple in a row, you win 3. And those last 3 games, Rondé, it was against Carolina, Minnesota, who, I mean, they played 3 quarterbacks in that game, in that Minnesota game,
Yes.
and then Chicago, who is they're Chicago's better, but they're flawed. Right. And so when I look at what the Green Bay Packers did, there wasn't like a massively impressive win. Now, Jordan Love has been amazing, 32 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards, right? Doesn't make a ton of mistakes. There is so much like Aaron Rodgers in him. You see him throw like this touchdown he threw the tight end last week. It was just kind of like, dude, that's an Aaron Rodgers throw. So you know that that he's got the ability, but defensively, they're going to be stressed. The Cowboys destroy people at home. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, they're undefeated. They score, I think, 30 points a game plus at home. Now, some of that's because they had the Giants on their schedule, and the Jets, I think, played down there as well. So it's a little bit skewed, but they play great at home. But the challenge, for the Cowboys is once you make Dak have to work, right? Don't give him easy throws. We're going to sit in zones. We're going to disguise it type of thing. If Dak has to do that, then he really struggles, right? And so I think there's a way for the Packers to slow Dak down. I just don't know if they can do it. And to me, I like the Cowboys at home, even though they're laying a lot here, 7.5. And it's not they're not fun on the money line, but I would take them because I think they're winning this game, and I don't think it's going to be close.
I want to agree with you. I'm trying to create some interest in this game because I think this is probably the worst game of the weekend.
This would get out of hand.
Yeah, this is the one that you're going to look up and say, okay, I wonder what's going on. What time is this game? I don't even remember what time this game is. Is this the 4:00, 4:30 game? I got to look at look at the schedule. But either way, this is the one that I'm not least looking forward to watching because I don't think the Packers have it. I mean, I watched that Bucs game. I think you did that Bucs game where Baker had a perfect passer rating, and that just kind of exemplifies what this Packer defense can turn themselves into. And Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb connection is a much better product than what they've lost to this year already. So I'm with you. 7.5. Yeah. If the running game and Aaron Jones get going, maybe it's not that high, but I mean, it's 7.5 for a reason.
Yeah. This is the middle Sunday game, so it has a chance to be lost in the weeds.
Yes.
So we'll find out. All right, we'll come back, Rondé. We'll take another break and do the last two games: the Dolphins at the Chiefs, and then the Rams at the Lions, the one that everybody is anticipating and talking about. But here's what you can do before. Refer a friend. Refer a friend and earn $50 bonus this season with SuperBook Sports. SuperBook is the most trusted name in sports wagering, and you don't want to miss their Refer a Friend bonus. All you need to do is click on the Refer a Friend link under your profile picture in the SuperBook app. Share the promo code with friends, and you'll get a $50 bonus for everyone who registers using your code. So win money wagering and then win some money referring this season with SuperBook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome back. Segment 3 of the Super Wild Card Weekend edition of Ronde and Tiki, presented by SuperBook. The Dolphins at the Chiefs, Rondé. This should be the fun one, right?
Yes.
It should be fun because both these teams are flawed. It should be fun because people are going to bitch and moan because they can't see it because it's on Peacock. But this is the one game that has like such an intriguing quarterback matchup. Tua Tagovailoa has had ups and well, it started the other way. He's had downs and then ups in his NFL tenure. Pat Mahomes has been one of the best quarterbacks since he, first strapped on the Kansas City Red. And so there's a dynamic here that is bridging them, and that's Tyreek Hill, right? Who, when he left Kansas City and went to Miami, said, "Oh yeah, Tua's a more accurate thrower than Mahomes." And people looked at him like,
they call that gaslighting. I think that's what the young kids call that.
Right. But people looked at him like, "Oh, you're crazy." And then we see, Tua throwing for 450 yards a game to start this season. And, before teams started figuring him out, he's on this rocket ship. But the reality is the Dolphins, they really haven't beat good teams. And the good teams that they've played, they've faltered against. But in that same breath, the Kansas City Chiefs, they're flawed. Like, they're really flawed. Lead the league in drops. There's not that dominance that you used to see offensively, even though their defense has been better. Kansas City, if they're going to get knocked out of it, it's going to be this year because they don't feel like they're winning regardless of the opponent.
All right. When I go and do the strengths and weaknesses of the Miami Dolphins, obviously you start with Tyreek's freakiness, right? Just his ability to, led the league in receiving yards. His ability to blow open a game at any point only helped Raheem Mostert and A-Chain get into the conversation as the best duo running back early in the year. But then all of a sudden, that their ability to win shootouts went away at the end of the season. They got blown out by Baltimore, right? 56-19 game. Then they lose to Buffalo. I mean, that game didn't matter. I mean, we all kind of turned it off, including them late in that third quarter. So it's hard to judge them off their last two losses. But then you think back that they lost a game to the Tennessee Titans at home. Like, something stinks about Miami at times because that's not the good team that they lost to. Their ability to lose that explosive, shootout nature of their offense is worrisome. Now, doing that against a team like Tennessee is one thing, and Baltimore's defense is one thing. Kansas City's defense is pretty damn good, dude. And if there's been a strength that's only propelled Kansas City to the point where they had 11 wins this year because they weren't a good enough team to win 11 games this year, it was because of their defense. And I think the Chiefs playing at home, and you talking about people bitching about this game. How about people that are going to this game? It's going to be 0 degrees. It's forecasted to be 0 degrees in Kansas City, dude. Like,
lovely.
It's cold. I've never played in that cold. That's ridiculous. But the Chiefs at -4 here, it feels right because look, you can't discount what's been going wrong with the Miami Dolphins here in times of big games. Add that to the fact that Jalen Waddle's hurt. I think Mostert's playing. He's hurt. Both edge rushers. Jalen Phillips went on IR earlier. Bradley Chubb went on IR 2 weeks ago. Van Ginkel, the 43, the stand-up linebacker who had to go to defensive end or edge rusher because of those injuries 2 weeks ago, he's out. And Jerome Baker, middle linebacker, is out. Like, I don't know that you're overcoming all of that when you already can't beat good teams.
Yeah, you can't beat good teams. And Kansas City, as flawed as they feel this year, they've been here every year. And so don't tell me that they don't know what it's about. Now, this is the one time, well, it depends on what happens next week, but they don't have home field throughout, but they do have home field in this game. And I think that along with the injuries to the Miami Dolphins and the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs and Pat Mahomes and more importantly, Andy Reid have been here before, give them such a big edge. Like we talked about all year, the whole Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift thing and how it's distracting them. And when she'd go to games or since they started dating, they're 3-5 or whatever the heck their record was, right? If there's one team that can afford to, I don't know, not cruise through the regular season because you don't win 11 games cruising in the NFL, but not be at your best and still get to the postseason and be able to flip the switch, it feels like it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. And all those things you laid out with the Dolphins and the fact that they really haven't beaten anyone yet, it puts me squarely on the side of the Kansas City Chiefs. It's this. I don't even have to think that much about this one. Them laying 4 at home in terrible weather conditions.
Right, and this is going to be Isaiah Pacheco masterclass.
Right,
this is. Dude, you train and live in South Florida. This is so cliche-ish. I can't believe I'm saying it. But when that dude puts on his I don't give a damn outfit and starts running through your face when it's 0 degrees, you're going to test your courage trying to deal with that dude, man. Now, in Kansas City,
how many carries you want? 30? All right, good. Let's go.
Right. If Kansas City finds a way to get him involved early, I think they just break the will of the Dolphins here. I don't think, especially weather conditions, aren't going to be able to be that high flying offense. Now, if it happens, I'll be the first one to eat crow, but I just can't see it happen against this
game
team.
Of the week, Rondé. Game of the week or weekend. It's the last one on Sunday. The Rams and the Lions. And look, people talk about, there's a script in the NFL. You mentioned it at the top of the show. What are the chances that the LA Rams, right, who traded their quarterback because he didn't think he was good enough to the Lions so that they could get the Lions quarterback who they did think was good enough in Matthew Stafford to win a Super Bowl, and then they go and win a Super Bowl, and now in Wild Card Weekend 2 years later they're playing each other, right? This is the perfect script. I think they're even doing in Detroit a don't wear Stafford campaign. So obviously I'm serious. He was the best player for years, obviously Megatron, but you know what I mean? Stafford was the guy in Detroit. So if you were going to buy a jersey after Megatron retired, whose jersey are you buying? Matt Stafford. Right. So coming to this game, a lot of people want to wear jerseys to playoff games. And they're trying to do this don't wear Stafford campaign jersey in Detroit. So it'll be interesting to see if we see any Detroit Lions Stafford jerseys.
Do you remember how like positive Detroit fans were after Stafford won his Super Bowl? Like I remember them being like, like everybody sending him congrats and we love you and da da da. Like they were rooting for him as much as probably more than the fickle LA Rams fans. Like they wanted him to win the Super Bowl just because so they could say a Detroit Lions quarterback won a Super Bowl. Yeah, dude, this one I think is keyed up to be by far the best game of the weekend. As we talked about a little bit earlier when we were talking about which quarterback we would want, you said Goff, I said Matthew Stafford. His ability right now to work the ball to all his talented players. Obviously, Puka Nacua is going to be on all rookie team. He broke records this year. Cooper Kupp finally came back and started contributing. Add to what Matthew Stafford's been doing on offense with his arm and multiply that with what Kyron Williams is doing as a running back. Rushed for 1,100 yards this year, Tiki, in 12 games. Nobody wants to play this team. If you're in the NFC, you do not want to play the Los Angeles Rams right now. Now, they don't have anybody on defense other than Aaron Donald. Not a name that any of us would be able to sit back and recognize and say, oh, yeah, I remember that kid. I thought very highly of that guy coming out of college. They're all like 5th-round draft picks and free agents. Like, nobody knows who they are. I mean, they have a Kella Witherspoon. Remember him? He played in San Francisco. You know who Jordan Fuller is. I mean, he's been hurt recently. But outside of that, there's nobody. There is nobody. So Raheem Morris gets a lot of credit. Obviously, I'm a fan of his. He's a good friend, but he gets a lot of credit for what they're doing on defense for this team. And if there's a weakness, it's that they don't have enough studs on defense.
Yeah, and you talked about the Rams, Rondé, but Jared Goff threw for 4,500 yards, really 4,600 yards this year. I mean, when he's protected and not rushed to get the ball out, he's elite, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of those guys who we don't talk enough about. He had a 1,500-yard season and double-digit touchdowns, and the rookie tight end, forget his name now. Yeah, exactly. Laporta. Yep, exactly. Laporta. He was great, as was Jahmyr Gibbs.
86 catches for rookie, bro. 86 catches for rookie tight end. I think last year's top leading tight end receptions last year was 41. He has 86.
Yeah, it's exactly. So he's like a running back in that. I mean, a wide receiver in that regard. He's the second leading receiver on the team. The third leading receiver is Jahmyr Gibbs, who Dan Campbell drafted in the first round, right? And then you throw in David Montgomery, who had a 1,000-yard season. They have a true like 1-2 combination running back. Like both of those guys can dominate you. In fact, I think Gibbs was only like 20 yards short, maybe a little bit more of 1,000. They almost had 2,000 yards. Yeah. They had 2,000 yards, almost 2,000 yard rushers on defense. And when you do the total yardage, it's like, man, these guys dominate. Like there's yards, they're going to put yards and points up on the board. But the question for the Detroit Lions becomes, can they hang, right? Can they stop what the Rams are doing defensively? I think the edge here, Rondé, is to the Rams, even though they're on the road, simply because experience, Sean McVay, the arrogance that he carries is there. And the only thing that gives the Detroit Lions the advantage is that they're home. And the Lion fans have not felt this way in forever, right? This feels like their chance. And they may be a year ahead of, being a true Super Bowl contender, but anything can happen in the NFL. We've learned that and we've seen that. So while the Rams to me have the edge, I on this the money line, I'd go the Lions, even though I think this might be a close below 3 game, and I'd give the edge to the Rams.
You mentioned arrogance of the head coach. There's arrogance at both head coaches. I love the aggressiveness of Dan Campbell. The only thing that's going to hold back this Lions team in the playoffs is not those studs you just mentioned on offense. It's the 103 explosive plays they gave up on defense. No other team in the NFL had more than 100. They had 103. It's feast or famine, and the famine side of them when their defense disappears is scary. And so when I talked about liking Matthew Stafford, it was because of this game. Because he's going to get to go against the secondary that just can disappear at times. Now, he got some players. They went out and got Brian Branch, who was a stud, dude. Like, when I look at nickel corners, especially young nickel corners, I don't know if there's a better one playing the position than him right now. But outside of that, on the outside, they tend to get roasted. And Matthew Stafford is very good at finding Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp on all sorts of route combinations. And you give Sean McVay a week to really dive into a defense, I think, which I'm sure they've been doing for 2 weeks. I'm pretty sure that this one's going to be in favor of the Rams on the road. It's plus 145, Tiki. I am without a doubt taking plus 120, 145 on the road on a money line for the Rams in this one.
This is the only one we disagree on, because I like the Lions at home getting it done. You like the Rams on the road finding a way, despite not being world beaterish all season long, but they started playing good football when it mattered the most.
No doubt.
It's gonna be a fun weekend, dude. This is setting up to be exactly what the NFL wanted, right? And I'm not saying they scripted it to get these teams to play where they are against Tyreek Hill.
Hey, I don't know. When you get Pittsburgh going to Buffalo, like, that's like rivalry central without being in the same division, and all you need to do is Jacksonville to lose and crumble 5 out of 6 games or something. Like, I think it might be scripted.
You're right. Anyways, this will be a fun week to talk about next week, heading into the divisional round. But that'll do it for Ronde and Tiki, presented by SuperBook Sports. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the wild card weekend, the super wild card weekend.
Sweet.
The Ronde and Tiki podcast is produced by SuperBook Sports. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, Maryland, Nevada, New Jersey, Ohio, and Tennessee. In Iowa, call 1-800-BETS-OFF or visit 800betsoff.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342.